Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Cat's Track. We post an interview with an amazing Canadian each weekday for your daily inspiration. Today, I would like to introduce you to my friend, Adam Legge. Adam was born in Vancouver, and he has chosen Calgary for his home. He's been married for 8 years, and they have 4 beautiful children. I asked him how he does what he does and raised 4 children, too. Wow, busy guy. In addition to his family, Adam is passionate about reading, the outdoors, good wine, Winston Churchill, and the history of conflict. Well, he's certainly in the right place at the right time. Thank you for your service, Adam.
Thanks,
And you
Catherine.
will find his full bio attached. Adam, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Catherine. Thanks for having me. It's a real privilege.
Thank you. We'll start with our first question. What has been your biggest challenge in the last 2 months?
Well, a lot of my work, well, most of my work really is policy and government relations. And so I think what's been most challenging is really trying to figure out how we can be most useful. That's both to the members of our organization, the Business Council of Alberta, but also to government decision makers. We are, it's an oft said phrase, but we're in uncharted waters or unprecedented times or whatever you want to say, what sort of hyperbole we want to talk about, but it really is that we don't know. We've got parallels to the Great Depression, to the 1918 influenza, but the reality is, in modern times, in modern business practice, in modern capital markets, we have never been in these sorts of conditions. So, trying to figure out how and stay close with our members, understanding how they're responding to the current situation. What is it that they need from a business standpoint? What do they need from a public policy standpoint? And frankly, it is changing day by day and sometimes even hour by hour, particularly in the early days. And then also trying to figure out how can we then take all of that and be helpful to provide good insight and information to government. Much like business, they're in uncharted waters as well. And so they're trying to find ways to navigate what they need to do, what they need to deploy, what they need to construct. And they're being flooded by lots of organizations like mine, giving them free advice as to what or lots of asks in terms of what they want them to do. So it's trying to find how can you come up with that gem or that kernel or that really tangible, meaningful, thoughtful idea that can begin to actually make a significant impact. And because it's been so fluid, so dynamic, and they'll put out a program, it won't be perfect, and then you got to figure out what's wrong with it, why, how does it need to be changed, and then send more communication. So it's just a constant evaluation and assessment of what's needed and how and when, that's going to make as many people survive and thrive through the conditions that we find ourselves in.
Very good. Thank you, Adam. And what about the 3 things that you would like to share with our audience today?
Well, they're kind of varied. So the first one that really strikes me is I think we probably need to get our heads around this notion that we're going to be in this for some time. And when I say this, it's sort of a not life as we used to live it pre-COVID. Everything that I'm sort of reading now is beginning to say that belief of a vaccine or some kind of treatment by the end of 2020 or early 2021 is highly unlikely. And you look at the historical precedence of developing vaccines and getting them distributed, it's upwards of 10 to 15 years. Some of the quickest vaccines we've ever made in history have been in that sort of 5-6 year time frame. So we need to figure out if our definition of success or thank goodness we're through this is back to normal, I'm thinking at least 5 years out. So we need to begin to adapt our thinking and recognize we're going to be in this for some time. And so that means, how do we make sure we can operate society in a healthy way as possible? How do we get businesses operating in a successful way? How do we keep people safe and healthy, both in general public, but also for employees? How do we make sure we don't run out of money? And that's households, businesses, governments. We cannot continue to flow money out the door in support from a government standpoint, at least, in the magnitudes that we are now, at least not for much longer. So we need to be figuring out that normal is a long ways off. So we need to be thinking about what are we doing to bridge that between now and normal. That's the first thing. The second one would be is that I think that there is a chance to set a different course for Alberta. I think this has really both the COVID crisis and the oil price wars between Russia and Saudi Arabia have really identified and verified some of our vulnerabilities as a province. And that's on everything from the economy to our provincial revenue model to the talent that we have and the skills matching we have in terms of the future opportunities versus the previous opportunities. So we have an ability to chart a bit of a different course, now seeing the full extent of, I think, of some of the vulnerabilities. So why I've been lately talking about why don't we brand Alberta as the place to do hard things, and that's more from a sense of identifying global and grand challenges and saying, if you want to help solve those, you come to Alberta. And that's very innovation driven, it's very challenge driven, it's multi-sectoral. So if we're going to try and tackle things about energy for the world or feeding the world or keeping the world healthy, that has lots to do with many different industries, many parts of an economy. So it's not just trying to parse it out by sector, but by challenge that humanity is facing. So, but we have to be very purposeful and deliberate about that. So setting strategies to create those opportunities is going to be something we need to do. And then finally, probably one of the more controversial views, I guess, for me at least, is as we begin to look to recovery, I think what we have to be careful of is we can't afford to do things that we're doing simply to virtue signal, and that any things that we do out of a recovery need to be harshly rooted in reality and not virtue. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't be aspiring to come out of this through cleaner technologies or lower emissions or anything. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying if our ultimate goal is simply to do it because we know it's something that's popular out there and isn't really rooted in reason and reality, I think we have to be very careful, because some of the realities we're facing are industries like airlines that have lost 95% of their revenue stream and are unlikely to realize much growth for many years. So can we really afford to burden an industry that is vital to our livelihoods and the movement of goods and services? Can we afford to burden that industry with trying to force them into specific things like net zero or lower emissions things? We need to be able to get some stable economic footing before we can do too much on the environmental front. There are ways to blend the two, but it needs to be done very thoughtfully with the blend of reality, what's available in capital markets, as opposed to just doing it from a virtue signal standpoint. So those are the three key things that I think are really important.
Excellent, thank you. I have, because of what you just said, I have a couple of questions. Do you mind if I go off script a little bit?
Sure, yeah, go ahead.
Do you know PG Forrest at UC?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when I first met him many years ago, he actually had proposed to our city council that we consider considering something in plastics, where we could pivot into plastics. And we felt that at the time, and I don't know how he feels today, I haven't spoken to him about this for a long time, but at the time it really stuck with me, and I thought, with all of our educated, skilled workers here, could we pivot into plastics? Could we be a leader in this area? Do you see that in our future at all?
Yeah, absolutely. There is going to be I would sort of lump it under a broader category of petrochemical products. And we've got the inputs, the raw materials here in Alberta. We've got a number of companies that are building some petrochemical facilities. Pembina and Nova are putting in some big facilities here in Alberta. And we're now seeing a couple of things with COVID. One is a reluctance now to have our manufacturing reliant on overseas production in places that we're worried about things like quality and democracy and honesty and ethics. But two, we need to be able to make sure we have it in a way that's able to build up our own resilience. So having supplies and stockpiles, et cetera. So when you look at the fact that there is those convergence of the assets and the strengths we have here, plus the shift of what I will call sort of the repatriation of supply chains and manufacturing, absolutely, I think petrochemicals and plastics and, well, these N95 masks, a key component of the input there is petrochemical. A lot of the medical devices that were being used, ventilators, a huge piece are the plastic components. So I absolutely think, and I know for sure that the provincial government is thinking of that as a distinct strategy for Alberta in a post-COVID world.
I'm glad to hear it. I know we've been talking about business and the economy through this discussion. Can we just jump off a little bit and talk about something that I'm extremely passionate about, and that's brain and mental health. Mm-hmm. And what I and some of the people that I've been hanging out with in this space feel is the next pandemic. What is your thoughts with how this is certainly affecting our leaders, leaders of organizations? Well, everybody, it's affecting everybody, but how do you think that we're going to be able to address that as a province?
Well, I think there's two critical factors there, Catherine, and you've hit the nail on the head. Is that that's being sort of viewed as the potential second wave, or the next wave is the mental health of Albertans, and just the magnitude of disruption, the magnitude of loss of people they've lost jobs, they've lost businesses, they've lost savings, they've lost family members if they've passed away from COVID. So there's just been a tremendous amount of trauma and loss from a mental health standpoint. So I know many businesses are doing their best to try and provide the supports that they can. It's difficult when it's more remote. So organizations like the Calgary Counseling Center are having to adapt to more online and virtual kinds of counseling as opposed to in person. But I think they're finding ways to deliver that. The thing that and I'm a very significant advocate for increased mental health support. Have been for many years, and the thing that I think hopefully this pandemic brings to light is that our healthcare system is broken in many ways, but from the standpoint of it's just not there to support the mental health of Albertans and Canadians. I often say that you can go and be a complete idiot and go skiing out of bounds, break every bone in your body. You'll be taken to the hospital and they'll fix you as part of your healthcare, basically for free, right? You suffer a mental health issue, depression, and sorry, you have to go to a fee-for-service private place or a nonprofit like the Calgary Counseling Center. It's just not part of the health system. And so I hope that the silver lining of the magnitude of mental health impacts that we're seeing of this could be that it actually says, okay, the system's broken. We need to figure out a way to not only address the physical aspects of our bodies and well-being, but also the mental and wellness part of our thinking and our mental state. That to me, that's a huge gap in the health practice. So I hope that this does drive the impetus for a greater thinking about how do we ensure that people are well. A critical part of this is, and for many years, I've tried to figure out a way to bring it to bear, but many large companies have EAP programs or counseling support or healthcare dollars in benefit plans to go towards helping the mental health of their employees. But so many small businesses don't have that necessarily. There's just no toolkit for every single manager or supervisor or boss or small business to be able to say, to read the signals of when someone may be experiencing mental health issues, or two, provide them the right supports. And so that is also something that I'm working on with a variety of others to try and figure out how do we bring some of those supports to bear so that every employer can have a similar set of tools available to them.
I'm glad to hear that, Adam. I didn't know that. I'm glad. I'll talk offline. I've got some ideas.
Sure.
Awesome. And your final question is your good news or legacy story that you want to share.
Well, from a legacy standpoint, the work that we do from a public policy standpoint can often be very sort of geeky and deep dive and research oriented, but you sort of the legacy that I can hope for is that through the work that we've done and the recommendations we put in front of government that get adopted, that in some way it helped, one business, one person, one employee, one household. Right? That's the old, you hope for more, but ultimately that if the work that we've done has impacted somebody or a business in a positive way and made them able to get through this or enabled them to survive and not have to close down, that's legacy in my view. It's hard to know. We'll only know after time whether some of those things actually have borne fruit. And the reality is, this is being done from a collaborative effort. We don't have the monopoly on good ideas, and so lots of different great organizations around the country, my counterparts in BC, and my friend Goldie Hyder at the Business Council of Canada, and Dan Kelly at CFIB, and Perrin at the Canadian Chamber. All of us are, pulling together to try and bring these good ideas to bear for government. So that would be, one legacy. And the other legacy that it's always frustrated me, and I'm not sure whether it will actually change through this, but I hope it does, is, Alberta loves to have some sort of legacy rivalries, whether it's Edmonton and Calgary, whether it's the Flames and Oilers, Stamps and Eskimos. Another one that is quite prevalent is sort of oil and gas and everything else. And I do hope that a legacy of this is that we realize that oil and gas is an incredibly fundamental part of our economy. It has been, it always will be, but we have to find ways that the conversations don't break down when you start talking about other things, and recognizing that our innovation community is hugely important to the success of oil and gas by helping them drive everything from artificial intelligence, machine learning, productivity, efficiency, etc. That agriculture is a historic part of Alberta, and that is an incredible opportunity for us to seize in light of feeding a hungry world from a challenge standpoint. So I hope that the vulnerabilities that have been laid bare as a result of COVID and the price wars enable us to kind of come together in a way that says everything is important, and that we all need to work together to solve some of the challenges we face uniquely as a province, uniquely as a country, and that there's just not going to be enough time or resources or energy to continue to pit an either or. So I'm really hopeful that some of those rivalries break down and turn into collaborations.
I love it. I am so glad you joined us today, Adam.
Thanks for having me, Catherine. Real privilege.
Thank you. Everybody, that was Adam Legge. Awesome. I'm so glad he joined. Thanks for joining us for Cat's Track, and we'll look forward to the next one. Take care, guys. That was